Posted by you/efficient25625. This entire situation is kind of messed up, and honestly, I'm a bit heartbroken for my husband. Real names, I don't care. I'm Sean, 37M, my husband is Zach, 36M, and my son is 16, not saying his name. I divorced my ex-wife after she cheated on me throughout our entire marriage. That was over a decade ago, and I don't care anymore. My son is mine, already over and done. I met Zach when I was 28, and my son was 7. Zach and I hit it off instantly. I was finally in a place to start dating again, and thankfully, he was the first person I was interested in. We connected on everything my ex-wife and I did, and a million more things. People say life has a plan for you, and honestly, I believe it. I'd go through a million more divorces and being cheated on over and over if I ended up with him every time. One of the big things was my son. Zach was hesitant at first, just because of the situation, but he wanted a family badly, and I was excited for him to meet my son. After dating for a year, I talked to my ex and told her I was introducing our son to a guy I'm seeing. I told her it's serious and that I see a future with him. She was happy for me. We have a very good relationship now, and she just asked me to let her know when I was going to do it so she could be prepared if our son had any questions for her when he visited next. Zach and my son were best friends. They did everything together. They loved playing Minecraft and spent hours sitting in front of the TV. I loved watching them. I was so incredibly happy that the first person I found after my ex was this amazing. After about 6 months, I asked Zach to move in, and the rest is exactly as I've been describing. Amazing. My son started calling Zach his other dad when he was 10. It was a very sweet moment, which makes this hurt even more. Well, last weekend, my son had 3 of his friends over. They were playing video games in his room, and I had just left to do grocery shopping for the week, so it was just them and Zach. I don't know how the topic came up, but things got very homophobic. My husband was sitting on the couch, and I guess my son and his friends thought both of us had left, but it was just me. My son's room is connected to the living room, so if you're sitting there, it's not hard to hear what's going on in his room if he's being loud enough. 4 teenage boys playing video games. One of them said, "How's it feel having a fag as a father?" My son laughed and said, "Kinda crappy." They then said my husband probably touched him when he was little, and my son replied, "He can try it now, I'll knock his lights out." So not only was he being disrespectful to Zach, but he was also threatening him over something we all know he would never do. They kept saying things like, "Which one do you think takes it in the rear?" and, "Probably the fag, at least your real dad still likes women." Just a bunch of hateful stuff. My husband sat there, listening to it all, silently crying. I got home about 2 hours later to find my husband sitting in his car with a bag packed, waiting for me so he could leave but didn't want to leave my son alone. I asked what was going on and why he was leaving, and he told me everything. I tried to understand as best I could. I insisted that my son wasn't serious, that he was just being a stupid kid acting tough with his friends, but it didn't matter, the damage was done. Zach left, and I went inside and went off on my son. His friends left, and I spent a good 3 hours going back and forth with him. At first, he was very unapologetic and kind of agreed with his friends. I asked if he actually thought my husband had sexually abused him when he was younger, and he said, "No, but kids block those kinds of memories out, so really, who knows?" I told him to pack his stuff, he's going to live with his mother. For context, his mom lives 3 hours away, which means a new school, new friends, if any, and less private space, as he'd have to share a room with his stepbrother. Just everything you'd expect from going from being an only child in a house to one of 4. My son instantly changed his attitude. He was crying and begging me not to send him away, saying he didn't mean it and was just lying to seem cool in front of his friends. I asked why he doubled down after they left, and he didn't have an answer. I told him to pack his stuff, he's leaving in the morning. I called my ex, told her the situation, and she agreed that he needs something drastic because what he did was not okay at all. Fast forward to now, and my husband is back, but he cries every night. Honestly, it feels like he's mourning, which I don't want, because when you mourn, you don't get over someone, you just become as close to indifferent as possible to keep living your life without them. I don't want that. I want my husband and my son to have that strong bond I know they have, and I don't want them to throw it away over this. I don't agree with what my son did, but those kinds of accusations can, at a minimum, ruin someone's life and, at worst, end it. I'm disgusted with my son. He calls me every day, telling me he misses me and Zach and wants to come home. I stay strong on the phone, but afterward, I break down, and my husband tries to console me. He tells me my son can come back and that he will leave, but I won't do that. I just don't know what to do. I miss my son, and I miss coming home to see them spending time together. I've thought about therapy for him, but he said no. You can't force therapy on someone, they'll just sit there for an hour and waste $400. I need advice. Update 2 days later. This will be long. Sorry. Not going to lie, the entire original post was basically a disaster. I expected a few replies, with maybe one actually being helpful, and then for the post to fizzle out. That didn't happen, though. I wish it had. There was so much back and forth, and so much hate towards me just for being gay. I expected some, but holy crap. I was done with that post when someone suggested that my husband and I both abused my son sexually. Just no. Total disaster. I thought living in the middle of nowhere in Montana was bad with the homophobic crap I deal with. As for the update, I spent the day yesterday with my son. A lot of people accused me of not taking his claim seriously. I did. The first 30 minutes of our initial conversation when this all happened were focused on whether he had actually been abused. He said no. I asked again when I got there, and I made sure to let him know that there's no one I'd believe over him, and he wouldn't be punished for telling the truth, whether he was abused or not, but I needed to know. Once again, he said no, he was never touched or raped by my husband. Now, on to the questions and his answers. Why would you say something so dangerous? My son said he was feeling rejected by my husband because, lately, they haven't been spending nearly as much time together, which is true. A large part of my husband's life has been centered around my son. Zach tutors him, coaches him in basketball, goes on morning runs with him, and used to drive him to and from school before my son got his own car. They both share a lot of interests, so they've spent a lot of time together, especially in a kid/step-parent dynamic. Towards the end of last summer, when my son was still at his mother's, Zach talked to me. He said he wanted to start spending more time apart, not in a separate way, but more about developing a social life outside of our family. He realized that with my son leaving for college in about 2 years, he didn't want to fall into a depression once my son was gone, with nothing else to focus on. I agreed and told him it was a good idea and that he had my full support, as long as he still came home every night at a reasonable time and didn't let his relationship with my son suffer. As of now, yes, things are different. My son doesn't need rides to school or tutoring, and he's no longer playing basketball. Their hobbies are still the same, but Zach has been spending less time at home. It's not like he's gone all the time or coming back at 3 a.m., but he has a healthy social life now. It's hard to explain, but things have changed. Do you realize how dangerous it is to say something like that if it isn't true? He said yes, but he didn't think anyone was listening and was just going along with his friend's nonsense. That didn't make sense to me, so I asked why he stood by his statement after I sent his friends home. He said he thought he shouldn't back down from something he said. I told him that's incredibly stupid, and he should never do that, especially if he regrets what he said and it wasn't true in the first place. He said he knows and realized that when it happened, but he just couldn't stop himself from keeping it up. It didn't hit him that it was serious until I told him he was going to stay with his mother. Why do you want to be friends with people who talk so much crap about your parents? He said he doesn't really want to be, but these kids bully everyone they don't like, and he feels like he's in too deep to back out now. That I do understand. I had kids like that in my school. They bullied everyone, but they were cool to me until they found out I was gay, and then they made my last few years of high school hell. I told him I get it to some degree, but he doesn't have to add to what they're saying. A small chuckle and a screw you is usually enough to get people to move on from something. I also asked about them bullying him, because they kind of were. He admitted they do, but said it's not that bad. They just rip into him every so often about having gay dads, and over time, I guess that made him feel poorly toward Zach. The distance my husband was creating between himself and my son, mixed with the things his friends were saying, just built up. I told him I understood. I want to make it clear, I don't support what he said, but I do understand the emotions behind it. Why didn't you talk to us about how you were feeling? He said he didn't want to start anything. He and my husband are still close, and he didn't really know how he felt, he was more confused than anything. So, he didn't want to say something that might cause a fight if he wasn't even sure how he felt. I understood that too. At this point, I think this whole situation was just one miscommunication after another. Open dialogue could have prevented all of this from happening. There were a lot more questions, but my ex and I ended with, do you actually feel remorseful for what you said, or are you just tired of sleeping in the same room as a 7-year-old? He's genuinely remorseful. He told me that even if he had to stay there all year, he would still feel terrible about what he said about Zach. I reassured him once again that if anything had happened, now was the time to speak up, and I would believe him. Again, he said no. He started crying, saying he just missed us. It was an emotional moment, we hugged, and I told him I loved him and that would never change. I asked him to leave the room so his mother and I could talk. We decided on a month-to-month assessment to see when he would regain privileges, eventually leading to him coming home. There are conditions to all of this, like family therapy, solo therapy, and completely cutting off his friends, which I will help with. He was against solo therapy at first but eventually came around. He asked if Zach would be there next time, and I said no, but I would ask Zach if he wanted to come. My son smiled at that. I still believe sending my son to my ex-wife's was the right move. A lot of people aggressively disagree, and that's fine. My parenting style isn't for everyone. One of you even told me I should beat the kids up, so do I really care if some of you disagree with how I parent? Not really. The situation still sucks, and I don't know what to say. I miss my son. He's not coming home right now, and I wish I was leaving her house with him. As it stands right now, my son is living with his mother and her family. He will get his phone, PS5, and car back at the end of the first, second, and third months, in that order. He will be able to move out of the room he's currently in and into the guest house at the end of month 4. Every month after that is touch and go, and we'll discuss at the end of each month what we think. My son will do bi-weekly solo therapy, and we will all do bi-weekly family therapy. We see it as him doing solo therapy one week and family therapy the next. He can come back sooner, we want him back. My husband has wanted him back since he left, and I want him back too. His mother is holding strong, but she also sees how miserable he is, so I think she'll eventually break and give up the guest house early. It is what it is. At the end of the night, my son asked if Zach would want to hear from him so he could apologize. I told him yes. I've told him yes a few times now. Zach would love to hear from him. I doubt he'd even have to wait longer than one ring before Zach picked up. My son called him as I was leaving, so I know they spoke, though I don't know what about. When I got home, Zach was feeling like crap and blaming himself for all of this. I told him it's no one's fault, we just needed to talk to each other more. All in all, I do think my son is remorseful. I believe he was just feeling trapped and isolated in a bad situation and didn't know how to get out of it. I feel for him, and I wish I had seen what was happening sooner. Thank you all for the advice, or most of you, anyway. Some of you were just nasty and hateful. But someone on my first post, I think called Stoner Therapist or something like that, gave really good advice. I didn't say it on that post, but if you read this, good stuff, thanks for it. The next update will be when he comes home. Hopefully, that'll be soon. Thanks, y'all. Editor's note. Ops said they would provide an update, but their account has been suspended. If we do get an update, it will be under a different account.